Hi guys, and welcome to another Dash Devcast. Some of you may know that I released the release candidate version 0.3 some time ago, like almost 2 weeks ago. Uh, but I've decided to release another release candidate version 0.4, which was released like 2 days ago. And the decision behind this was that I wanted to get rid of the dot twin inside the Dash animation system. There were a couple of reasons, but one of the main reasons was that dot twin is not really good when you want to package the Dash system or anything that contains dot twin as a Unity package through the UPM, the Unity Package Manager. And that was a target for me to use the Dash system as basically as a Unity package. And there were other obvious reasons like editor time, management of tweens, and I didn't really need all the extension stuff because I'm using pretty much uh, very very common tweens that use custom update functions. And there are other great new features in Dash animation system that you can explore. The changelog is there. There is a lot of information for all the fixes, all the changes, and all the added stuff. So we can go through it. And I also decided to just release a new tutorial for you guys. So let's start. I have this simple project scene, and I've decided to have this kind of hierarchy where I have a UI or the canvas with different empty objects as a starter. Then I added the content as well. These game objects all contain the Dash controller for their section, as you can see. So it's 3 different Dash controllers, and they are always active. It's because the Dash controller needs to be aware if there is an event sent to it, and I will be sending an event to that. You cannot send an event to an inactive controller, obviously. So that's why this is always active. It's pretty much an empty rect transform, and that it manages the content under it, which is inactive because we want it to start in an inactive state, and that is then managed by by this Dash controller. And what I meant by events is that I have this main Dash controller on the canvas itself, which then sends events to these other Dash controllers to control them. I also have one of the new features of the release candidate version, global variables for so they are available in all the Dash controllers. As you all know, all the Dash graphs have their own variables, but now these are global. And I have this single Boolean variable there, which I will be using to check if a screen is changing between these 3 screens. So let's start. I also have this small utility. It's not part of Dash. It's just for me to basically I can show you what it does. It basically sends these events to Dash. So these are static events that are sent to the Dash core, and it will send an event with this name, which is change screen, and node flow data with a single attribute called screen. So I will basically am telling it to change screen to main, change screen to shop, and change screen to rankings. So this is what you will be calling from your code. This is just some Unity editor stuff to show this window. Not really important. I will try in future versions make this a bit more readable, because at the moment there is not a simple overload of the send event that would take, for example, a string as a parameter and then create a node flow data with a single string parameter. So there is just an overload that you can create. You can send a dictionary there or a node flow data which is created from dictionary, as you can see here. I will try to think about simpler overloads for these kind of scenarios. So these are the three events, single line events that I'm sending using these buttons. So let's just show them. So I have these three screens that I'm animated using the dash. As you can see, when I'm in main, it automatically activated, then deactivated, and we are activating in shop, and then now in rankings. So how this is handled, as you saw, we are just sending an event here. We have this global dash controller, as I said, on this canvas. So let's open it. It's very simple dash controller. What it does is it listens to on the change screen event I just mentioned. Then it checks if a variable named screen changing is true or false. Obviously, it's what I mentioned by the global variable, so it's checking a global variable because we don't have a local variable called screen changing. So if I, for example, let's run it again. If I show you here, you can see that it's getting changed. So we can't like, now am I clicking like 5 times on the main, and as you can see it just changes once because it sets the variable. If it's not true, set it to true. So okay, we are not changing anything, the screens are not changing between themselves, we can continue. Let's set it to true, so we are going to change the screens between themselves. And now we are checking if we have an active screen. As you can see, it's a local variable for this graph, and at the beginning the active screen has no property. Let's check it again just to show you. When I'm changing this, you can see that it changed. Now the active screen is main. Let's go to shop. It changed the variable for this graph. It's not a global variable because we only need it inside this graph. Now it's changed to shop. Now it's changed to ranking. So this branch basically checks if there is an active screen, because if there is an active screen we need to hide it first, and then we can show the other screen. Obviously we cannot basically hide and at the same time show. We can do that, but we want some kind of pause between these two. So okay, if we don't have any active screen, basically, or if we don't have, it's a false. Basically what we do is call an event, set a custom event uh, named screen, which is a variable plus show. This is the variable we are sending, as I mentioned. So we are sending main, we are sending shop, we are sending rankings. So it will be main show, main rankings show, and obviously shop show. And then we set the active screen to the screen that we want it, that we changed to, basically. So there is no screen, we call main show and then set the active screen to main. That's everything we do. So let's check what happens here. We are calling main show, but this graph, this main graph, the UI doesn't have the main show, because as I said, it's just managing all the screens. It doesn't really need to know if there is some kind of main and how to show it. We should implement that inside our dash graph for that particular screen. If we don't implement it, nothing happens. Obviously, there will be no error, but just nothing happens. So we can dynamically add any number of screens. If we have implemented them, they will show, obviously. So let's go to main screen and open editor for that particular graph. So we have two events that this graph listens to. One of them is main show and one of them is main hide. So we are calling the show method. So what happens here? There is some kind of animation magic obviously, but we can preview it. As we see, we have this node set as preview, so let's just run it. Okay, so this is what the main show does. Let's look at it. It will set the content as active, so we will set this. Obviously we want it, we want to animate it, the user, the player to see it. Then we just animate or set the content outside of the screen, because the default, if we just activate it, the default when we are editing it inside the Unity editor and like that, we have it on the screen. This is how so if we just activate it, we will see it right away. So we need, as I said, this happens in the single frame as well as with this, since we have a zero time, so there will be no tween. Zero time means it will be called right away. So this will activate it and set it outside, to position outside of the screen. Then we will basically animate it inside. So we will animate the content, which will come from the right side, and we will animate the title. As I said, we can just preview this. Oh, this. So as you can see it animated. I will deactivate. I cannot preview this node right away because I have no target. I need this target. So this is what happens. The animation and the dash title comes down. Obviously we didn't do anything with these buttons, so let's activate these connections and preview it right away. As you can see, they are animating in a similar fashion. So what happens here is the logic for the buttons. We have separated the logic in two parts. This one is similar to what this does, because the buttons, as I mentioned, are visible here. So we need to set them outside of the screen so we can animate them in. So this happens in zero time, basically iterating over all the buttons. As we can see, we are retargeting to the buttons and setting them to false. These two will probably be merged into a single utility node as well. And that's what I have in nice to have features. Maybe I will implement it. Then this part is the active part that will animate the buttons. So basically we will wait for a dot 2 seconds, then iterate over the buttons with a small pause between each button, then set it to active again and animate it from a position outside of the screen, and with a small, as you can see, it just scales down a bit with a small scaling. So that's what happens. Let's go back to this graph. What happens if we have a screen active? We will go this route. So what happens? We will send a custom event called active screen. This is still the screen that was previously selected, because this is the current active screen, which is nothing at the beginning. Then there is the variable called screen, which is the one that we want to show. So we are sending to the active screen that it should hide. Right away we are setting the active screen to the screen that we are just going to show. Then we have a small pause between, as I said, we want to, so they shouldn't hide and show at the same time. There should be a delay between hiding and showing, so we have a small delay, and then we are again similar to this, sending a custom event that it should show the next screen. This is something I did for simplicity in most cases. If you want more complicated UI scenarios, you could also implement event-based checking. For example, like sending a hide event, and then the graph that would hide would need to send its own event hide completed back, and then run the show. So it would, for example, in this case, in this simplified case, if we had a different screens with a different length of hiding animation, for example, some of them would hide for over half a second, we would run the show before it would be actually hidden. So if you have a constant or a very similar time when it comes to hiding your screens, you can go with the simplified version. If you have a different, really different times, you would probably just send this event and then listen to a specific event that it was actually hidden, something like active screen hidden or stuff like that. And then you can check, okay, the screen was hidden. What was the screen? Because we have them in variables, and you would basically continue with showing the new screen. You can do that as well. It's a really simple. It's like a couple of nodes more. So I just wanted to use this scenario. If you have a problem with setting up the event-based scenario, just let me know. I may have a tutorial for that as well. So this is how we basically set it up. So we can also show the height. Height is really simple. We are basically sending the content outside of the screen and then setting it to inactive. And as you can see in all the graphs, the hiding animation is the same. Only the showing animation is different. Even though even in the showing animation, this part is the same, which is the setting the content to true and then animating the content with the title, because all of the screens have the title. And then we have these parts that are different for each of these graphs. So let's play with it a little bit more as well. So for example, what I would do here inside these graphs is I would take these nodes and create a box just to manage for other people the information. Okay, what is this? So this is the animation of content or of insights. You can set this. I always like black boxes, so something like this. And then you have this part that is so when someone opens it, okay, it will be like this is probably just the inside this content, a custom animation, or you can go a custom animation. So if we look at it like this, you can see that all these animations or part of the animation for the showing and the hiding animation basically for all the screens are the same. It's not really great to use it like this, because for example, if you want to change it to the other side and we change it here, all the other screens would use their own settings. So we can go with a global variable, for example, just use a toe position with a global variable, but there is a better way. Another thing that was added to the release candidate, and I want to mention it, that now you can copy and paste nodes between graphs. So if you just want part of the functionality to copy it to a new graph, it's very easy now. It wasn't that easy before. Also, you can now copy and paste variables as well. So, but what you can do if you are feeling adventurous is use an experimental feature It's still experimental, even though I'm working on it vigorously. It's called the subgraphs. So I will show you how to use them. So what we can do here is just take this, which is the hiding animation. We can take it from any of the graphs because it's same for all of them. I'll just copy it, and what I will do, I will create a asset graph. As we mentioned, you can create bound graphs. If you, for example, if I create the dash controller and I create graph, you can create the bound graphs which are bound on this controller. I mentioned in the other videos, you can check it out. Or we can create an asset graph. That will create a graph as an asset which is just linked to this controller. We are not going to create it like this. So I created an asset graph. It's nowhere on any controller. It's existing only in the assets. That's why, for example, it cannot use exposed references, and you cannot retarget using references because there are no references from inside. It's just an asset. It doesn't know about the scene. So I will open an editor for this, and I can paste the two nodes I just got from this graph. So basically what we want to do here is from this height event send it to a custom graph that is an asset graph, and it will be same for all the screens. So let's create the subgraph node. Subgraph node is why we activated the experimental features, because if you don't activate it, you will not see a subgraph node, similar to some other nodes, because they are mentioned as experimental, and people using them should expect unexpected basically at the moment. But as I said, I'm working on it. So now we created this subgraph node, so we can specify that we can either open editor, which will create a subgraph bound to this graph, to this dash controller, similarly to this, so it will be bound on this instance of the controller, which we don't really want. At the moment we want to use an asset. So now we specified that it will be used an asset graph, and we can specify that it will be this kind of graph. I will delete these two nodes. I will not need them anymore. But we cannot connect it. That's because we didn't specify any inputs to the subgraph. So let's open it. This will open our asset graph, and I can create an input. Also, I mentioned inputs and outputs in other videos. Basically, at the start of the dash, if you really started using it long time ago, there was only one input and one output in the graph. Now you can have as many inputs, as many outputs as you want. So, and each of them needs to have a specific name, unique name, but feel free to use them. So as you can see, this is the input. Okay, I will call it input, input, just because we named it input. It looks funny. And now I connect this input to the animation. So it will just, we will get all the data that we need for retargeting and what is actually set active from the node flow data that's flowing through the graph. So we just don't need to create any variables or anything. It will be all there. So now if I go to the parent, I see that now I can connect to an input inside this graph. So let's just connect it. Okay, so this is what we did on the main screen. Let's play. And as we can see, the main screen now behaves similarly if the nodes were here. So this obviously works. So let's copy this node and go to shop screen, delete this, paste this subgraph node correctly to the height graph, go to the ranking screen. Oh, and now we have a problem, because we can do, obviously we can pass this node and delete these two. So let's just run it like this, just to show you. So now it works, but we need to connect to, because in the retargeting in the ranking screens we also need to destroy the rankings which are created dynamically. You can, if you just go here and check what this actually does, the show method for the ranking screen. I will show you the ranking screen just to bring it up. You see all these items in the board for the ranking item and stuff like that. These are created by the dash graph from a prefab. So if I just exit it, you see that the board is empty. So you can create your ranking system from a prefab. I also mentioned this in another video, so you can check it out. It's using this spawn prefab node and then just setting a text for the rankings and stuff like that. So it just at the runtime it creates all these ranking items inside the board. So here in the hiding animation, we are basically destroying these items because we no longer need them after the ranking screen is hidden. We can keep them if we want to, for example, like caching in real-time scenarios in a game, but currently in this case we are destroying them. So we need to edit this subgraph and create an output. So after this animation is done, it will go to the output. So let's go to the parent graph, and you can see now the subgraph node has an output and it goes to this. So it will continue. So we're just basically reusing specific parts inside this subgraph node and then just continuing to a custom part. So now it works. So now if we just went to the subgraph and changed this to the plus 1080 instead of minus 1080, what it will do, it will basically change the hiding animation for all the screens, and now they hide to the right instead to the left. And we just changed it in one of them. Obviously this is a asset graph, so it was serialized to an asset, and now we basically changed that, so we can even do whatever we can do, like obviously just to show you that now it will change all the screens. Now it's hiding to the top. You can have more complex animations there as well. Now if we check the graphs once again, we can see that this part, and go to the shop screen again, this part, it looks very similar because it is the same. Since we are using string retargeting here, which I did on purpose, obviously, we can put it inside an asset graph and it will work for all the graphs because all of them got content and title. So this just retargets by string. So I can basically copy these nodes again, create another dash graph, let's call it show graph, and then go to the main screen, create another subgraph node, go to use an asset. We are going to use the show graph, open it. This is an error. I created a version check for for graphs, if you migrate to a new version of the dash, so it will let you know that okay, this graph was created with an earlier version of dash graph system. So it will tell you that it will migrate, for example, to fix serialization issues. Now, for example, if you were using older dash graphs dash system, it was using dot twin obviously, and all, for example, ease settings on all the animation nodes was a dot twin type. Now, when I switch to my own implementation of twin, it uses my own easing type. So this will basically go through and create the default state for this new type that wasn't before in these graphs if you migrate to this new version. So all your easings from all the older dash systems would be reset to linear because we basically removed the dot twin type. We don't know what the value was. The type no longer exists. In the future, I will try during these changes in the serialization, try to let you know about the mapping, what actually happened. But at the moment, this is a very brute force, so I will just let you know that okay, this graphs was earlier and we should migrate it. And the version you will see probably is 0 because there was no version checking in previous versions of Dash. That's why it's saying that the version is 0. But this should we created this graph for example like a minute ago, so it should have a version of 0.4. I will fix it before releasing the 0.4.1. So let's just check migrate. There was nothing to migrate anyway, and let's paste the nodes. And again, we need an input, so let's create an input and just plug it in. Okay, go to the parent, and now instead of using this, we can delete it. So we just change it for the main. Let's check it out. And we can see it works. So again, we can get rid of this. We have just this subgraph. And let's copy it. We can paste it here. Get rid of these. And again, in the rankings, we can get rid of these. And paste the subgraph. And let's try it out. And as you can see, it works. And if I go to this subgraph and change this, for example, as I said, I will just set it to, okay, this is the reset, the initial reset, so I will just go to minus and then animate it to, and this is the title, this is the content, animate it to 0. So we are using absolute values, so it will be 0, and there will be the animation of the title should be the same. So let's try it out. And as you can see now, we changed the show animation for all the screens. Simple as that. If you go to the subgraph, you will see that in the editing graph it will tell you what kind of graph you are editing. So we are inside the ranking screen graph and subgraph, which is the ID of the node. So it may be kind of chaotic for you. So because, for example, here you see that this is subgraph and also that this is subgraph. Because this is the name of the node type, not the node itself. The node has an ID which you can check in the advanced. You can even change it if you want to. So I can say that this is a show subgraph. It needs to have a unique ID. That's why when I created the 0 ID, I deleted all the characters. It automatically generated a unique ID for me. So this is a show subgraph. So if I go open editor, it will show you that we are inside the show subgraph. You can also check the IDs by just checking that you want to show node IDs. Now you have all the IDs of the nodes. Because for example you want to reference the node, as I shown in the Machina video how you can reference nodes, it's similar to in Dash. So as I said, this is the update, the release candidate 2 version. Check it out, especially the animation nodes, because as I said, I got a lot of that when I implemented my own easings, my own twinning. So if there is some issue with twinnings, I already got few errors reported. That's why I will be releasing 0.4.1 version with all the quick fixes that I encountered. And let me know if there is an issue or if there is something that you would like to see implemented, or you have any questions. Feel free to write me. Okay, and that's all for now. Thanks for watching.